What's up YouTube, Capital G here talking about prank kids in this video. And obviously I've been discussing prank kids a lot on my channel over the last week or so because there have been so many cards revealed for the archetype, and I think that people are keeping an open mind. I don't feel like expectations are really high on this archetype just because you can see some of the limitations. The fact that they only have one spell or trap card to their name, there are only 3 main deck monsters in the archetype, and they only float when they're used for fusion summon material or a link summon in their own archetype. Like, it has to be for prank kids monsters for those dudes to float and have their own little special effects. Also, none of the monsters have great stat lines, and honestly I don't think that you can point to any one prank kid card and actually say like, oh, this is an OP card, this is something that is actually game breaking or amazing or could potentially become broken in the future. So I think that expectations have been tempered. I think that people are just looking at it as a fun archetype, but I do want to talk about 3 things that I feel are kind of going unnoticed when it comes to prank kids that are actually very significant. I actually don't think that these things were planned by Konami. I feel like they're just kind of coincidence, but these are things that have vastly improved the potential of the archetype, because you can look at this deck and you can see some of the fundamental flaws that it has. The deck doesn't have any stun cards. When it comes to disruption, it does have some decent disruption with its big boss monsters, but those are cards that you have to invest a lot of resources to summon, and you do have to actually tribute those cards, and they can't be summoned back from the graveyard easily because they have to be link and fusion summoned respectively. So there are definitely some problems with the deck, but there are 3 things that I think kind of make up for it. And when I first saw this archetype, there were a couple of puzzling things, like how the attributes and the typing was all kind of random across the board, whether it be for the links, the fusions, or just the main deck monsters. But some of those are actually reasons why this deck might actually end up being competitive. And I don't mean like from a tier 1 standpoint, but maybe like a tier 2 at best standpoint, regional top 8. So the first thing I want to talk about is instant fusion and the fact that you can instant fusion out Prank Kids Rocket. This is something that is incredibly important to the deck. Prank Kids Rocket is a monster that basically has a built-in Goki rematch. We know that double monster reborns in Yu-Gi-Oh generally tend to end up being broken, especially when you can end up using those monsters however the hell you want. Goki rematch, Infernity Barrier are the first 2 cards that kind of come to mind that have that type of effect. Prank Kids Rocket, you can summon it straight from instant fusion. You can get 2 Prank Kids monsters from your graveyard, and then you can continue using those monsters however you need. That means that you can instantly go into like one of the Prank Kids Link monsters, because they have a couple of Link 2s. They just had another one revealed, and then those Prank Kids monsters will actually float. This doesn't require you to actually use your normal summon. It requires a little bit of setup, but I think that it's well worth it. And from what I've seen in duels, whether it be on like Lithium's channel or others, by the way, I highly suggest you guys watch his latest Prank Kids video. It'll be in the description of this one. But Prank Kids Rocket, being able to get that effect off, that double monster reborn or Goki rematch effect, that is invaluable when you're talking about going for Link 4s. Whether you need to go for Borlo Dragon to snatch steal your opponent's monster, you need something that is not susceptible to basically like targeting if you're playing against like Altergeist, or if you happen to be dueling and you need potentially to push for game with Boros Sword Dragon. When you're going for the big links, if you're going for like Link 3s and Link 4s to kind of close the game out, or to put a really big monster on board, getting 2 monsters from your graveyard back in a turn without using your normal summon is invaluable. And also, don't disregard the fact that when you instant fusion out Rockets, it is considered to be properly fusion summoned. So if you happen to have Monster Reborn, it can kind of be an extender, being able to summon it back from the graveyard. It's not bad. So the second thing I want to talk about is probably the aspect that has gone the most under the radar and kind of unnoticed, because it doesn't really stick out like a sore thumb, the importance of it when you first kind of look at the archetype and kind of break it down. But it's the fact that there are a lot of thunder monsters in the archetype, and you're probably thinking, okay, what exactly is the importance of that? And this is actually why I think that this one might not be a coincidence. Well, you guys know that in Soul Fusion, Konami is basically revamping the entire Thunder Dragon archetype in that set, and I believe that Soul Fusion and Hidden Summoners are going to be released on like back-to-back months in the TCG and in the OCG. So maybe again that isn't even a coincidence, but it opens up the potential for you to be able to summon those very beastly Thunder Dragon fusion monsters in this archetype. We know those Thunder Dragon fusions, especially the small one, the Thunder Dragon, the Super Bowl Thunder Dragon, just the level 8. It's incredibly easy to summon because all you need is a Thunder monster to activate in the hand, and then you just give one up on your field, and boom, you have a 2600 monster on the field that has a decent level of protection. This is great because not only does it give the Prankids deck a lot of offense, but you know, when I first looked at Prankids Pulse, I was like, all right, it's a level 1. You can convert it into Link Karibo, and I mean, you can do that. That's kind of cute, but you're talking about being able to take a monster with 0 attack and not convert it into a Link Karibo, which has 300, but convert it into a 2600 beater. And when you're talking about that amount of damage, obviously that can be crucial to the duel. That can be the difference between you actually just killing your opponent, OTKing them, or you not being able to close them out and giving them the opportunity to come back and actually win. What I like about this actually is the fact that when you look at the Thunder Dragons, you really don't have to run that many of them because you have a card like Bolt Thunder Dragon. I mean, it's a quick effect. It basically replaces itself. So if you just ran Bolt Thunder Dragons, okay, well now you can just discard it. You've activated a Thunder Dragon in the hand, and now you can convert your Prankids Pulse. You can turn that into a much more significant beater. And what I like is another thing when it comes to the Prankids and splashing these Thunders. When you look at the Prankids, right, obviously their floating abilities only activate once. So the second time that they're on the field, or when they're on the field after they've already floated, if you keep going into Prankid Link monsters and Prankid fusions, you can only go so far because you're not going to be able to get those floating abilities. Why not convert that into a potential huge beater that also offers itself a little bit of protection? You know, Thunder Dragons also have some nice utility effects because the Origin Thunder Dragon, it can actually be used on some of your other non-Thunder Dragon monsters. You can use it on like your Prankids Doodle to give it 500 attack, which I mean, it only has 2000, but hey, that could actually be relevant in a duel, maybe like 1 out of every dozen duels or something like that. You also have like the Avian Thunder Dragon, which is just a simple monster reborn for Thunder Dragons, and the Thunder Dragon monsters do float while on the field. So I think the fact that they're Thunder, you can run the Thunder Dragons in them, you can take a card like Prankids Pulse, which really isn't impressive on the field ever, you can make it into a commanding beater. That's something that can be the difference between winning and losing a game, and it gives you more viable options when it comes to offense in this deck. And then the last thing that I want to talk about, and I've actually mentioned it in my videos before, but I'm actually starting to realize how important it is now because this could be the best play going first and one of the plays that you see Prankids go for the most. But it's the fact that Prankids drop is a level 2 Aqua monster, and this opens up the door for you to make one of the best Ixie monsters in the game, bar none. Even by today's standards, Totally Awesome is an absolutely ridiculous and absurd card. There's a reason that it is still limited to 1 in the OCG. This gives the deck something that it desperately needs. It gives it the ability to have some form of negation. Prankids do have disruption, as I said before, but they have absolutely no ways of negating cards. Like if your opponent activates Regeki, if your opponent activates Evenly Match or Card of Demise or Pot of Duality, you basically just have to eat all of those cards. Even if you do go for Rorgun, if you do go for the Battling Butler, those can disrupt your opponent's plays when they're trying to do them, but they're not going to negate anything your opponent actually does. Going into Totally Awesome means you can negate their card. If it's a spell or trap, you can actually just take that card. That's excellent. And at the same time, you can get dropped back from the graveyard. And the thing is, this is actually really easy to do where you go into Totally Awesome turn 1 and you can still have other monsters on board, because if you happen to just go straight into Rocket, right, let's just say that you activate Prankids on the loose and you fuse Pulse with Lamp. Okay, so both of them are both going to float. You can get 2 copies of drop on the field, and you can activate your Pulse's effect. You can send your 3rd copy of drop to the graveyard. Well, now all you have to do is activate your Rocket. Your Rocket can get your other 2 dudes who you just fused with. You can get them both back on the field. You can then go for your Prankids Doodle. That'll get you your Prankids on the loose. You actually just add that card, and then you have a downward pointing arrow, and you can go for Totally Awesome because you still have the multiple copies of drops. And actually, when you go in the Doodle, that card's going to, if you use a drop, then that's going to let you float the drop and get another monster on board as well. So going for Totally Awesome gives the deck some negation. It really gives the deck a turn 1 play, because when I was looking at this deck, I was like, man, if you happen to go first, what exactly are you doing? You don't really have any stun cards. You don't really have any lockdown. Totally Awesome can be that lockdown. It can be that stun card. And I think generally when you have the ability to make Totally Awesome in a deck, you should kind of take it, especially when your monsters all kind of float and they let you summon your monsters from the deck. Like the fact that you can get dropped from the deck, especially the fact that you can get 2 copies of drop from the deck so easily, definitely run that. And it's a good card to, like, you know, be able to Monster Reborn back in later turns, because even though most of the time you'll use Totally Awesome on itself to negate something, you're still getting dropped back from the graveyard and potentially being able to take your opponent's card. But you guys let me know what you think of these small little things that I noticed about the Prankids archetype. When I first looked at this deck, I mean, I thought it was kind of cute and stuff, but I wasn't really sure how it was going to play. But then you start noticing these small things and they all actually end up to being a big thing, to where you don't see these plays initially, but then you actually end up dueling against it and you're like, whoa, did you just drop, you know, a Thunder Dragon Lord and a Totally Awesome on me in the same turn? It's like, it's actually kind of difficult to deal with, and it's all coming out of a deck that only has 3 main deck monsters and 1 spell to its name. These plays and these potential, or this potential, obviously kind of makes up for some of the deficiencies that the deck inherently has. So whatever you guys think, leave it in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already, and turn on that notification bell for daily videos.